Welcome to the debate. Today, we're continuing our deep dive into professionalizing the insurance claims process for contractors and roofers. We're specifically leveraging the steps that Latif, the author, has outlined to secure what he calls a truly correct estimate, one that maximizes recovery and, well, ultimately increases contractor profits on every single job.
Exactly. We've already covered the critical groundwork of identifying opportunities and revising the technical Xactimate estimate. So now we're really jumping into the execution phase. We are turning our attention to Chapter 6, which details Step 3, crafting the introduction email that actually, hopefully, secures that rapid approval.
And that brings us to the central question for today's discussion. When you're submitting a supplement, where does the real leverage actually lie? Is it in the, let's say, the strategic framing and the sheer clarity and scannability of the introduction email itself?
Or is the ultimate decision still dictated by the completeness and, maybe more importantly, the technical verifiability of the attached documentation? The Xactimate estimate, the photos, the code citations, all the hard evidence.
Well, I'm going to argue that the organization and messaging of that email are the primary determinants of rapid approval. It's about controlling the narrative and, frankly, making the adjuster's job easy.
And I come at it from a different angle. While I agree that organization helps, I fundamentally disagree on what holds the real power. I maintain that the technical substance, the verifiability of the documentation, those are the non-negotiable elements. The best framing in the world can't overcome a lack of proof.
The reality we have to acknowledge right out of the gate is the sheer chaos of a desk adjuster's workload. I mean, their inbox is a constant battlefield. We're talking hundreds of emails every day from policyholders, field adjusters, contractors. The email you send isn't just a notification. It is, for all intents and purposes, the contractor's sales pitch, or maybe a better way to put it is the executive summary of the case for change. So if your subject line is generic, or if the body of the email is weak, disorganized, or just too long, that supplement is automatically getting pushed to the bottom of the stock. It doesn't matter how accurate your supporting Xactimate file is. Our primary goal with this email has to be making approval the path of least resistance. It needs to instantly frame the supplement, presenting justification in these, clear, brief bullet points so the adjuster can understand the core request, the why behind the scope change, in 30 seconds before they even bother opening an attachment. If you communicate that why effectively in that initial glance, you win that first impression, and that is what accelerates the whole process.
Okay, that's a compelling argument about the adjuster's workload. And I agree, chaos management is absolutely key. But you're focusing on the symptom, which is speed, while I think ignoring the core accountability. An adjuster's job isn't just to clear their desk, it's to protect the carrier's financial integrity. They have to verify documentation to justify any payment, because they're constantly asking themselves one question: can I justify this expenditure to my supervisor?
Sure, but the email helps them do that.
Well, this justification requires technical substance. You can write the most charming, perfectly structured email, but if the attached Xactimate estimate is missing the necessary F9 notes explaining a code requirement, or if the photo files are just named img0347.jpg and thrown into a zip file, the verification process stops cold. The final decision relies on verifiable evidence, not just persuasive bullet points. If that evidence is unusable, the profit the contractor is after rests entirely on providing a defensible estimate. And presentation, is secondary to defense.
I see why you anchor on defensibility, but let me offer a different perspective on their workflow that actually integrates their accountability. Yes, they need justification, but the email is designed to give them that justification immediately in a format that bypasses any immediate, deep analysis. The desk adjuster is absolutely trying to close claims efficiently. Their performance metrics demand it. So if the email clearly lays out the added scope and cites the reason in a scannable bullet list, for example, drip edge replacement required, existing installed underneath the felt paper, citation, IRC 905.2.85. That one bullet point gives the adjuster the headline and the key takeaway. It provides the internal ammunition they need to just click approve or transfer the payment quickly, often within that desired 72 to 96-hour window.
But hang on.
That speed is fundamentally conditional. It's conditional on the fact that the actual proof exists in the attachment and is easy to find. The email provides the hypothesis, let's say, but the attachments provide the court-ready proof. Let's just assume the adjuster uses your bullet point to justify the payment just to hit their efficiency metric. Fine. But if that claim is audited later and they open the documentation and find the attached Xactimate is missing the relevant F9 node, or the photo documentation fails to clearly show the condition that necessitated the code, while now the adjuster is exposed, they can't defend a payment made solely on a contractor's assertion. The substance has to be flawless for the speed to mean anything sustainable.
I just fundamentally disagree on what constitutes the highest leverage point here. The technical work done in Chapter 5, Revising the Xactimate, that's all preparation. The presentation in Chapter 6 is the moment of application, of influence. And yes, F9 notes are critical, but the sheer volume of them, especially in a complex roof system with multiple material changes and code upgrades, can still be overwhelming if the adjuster has to scroll through 50 line items just to understand the big picture.
So you're saying it's about simplification?
Exactly. The email organization translates that complexity into an actionable summary. Our bullet list takes those, maybe 20 or 30 individual Xactimate additions and groups them into 4 to 8 main categories. Code-required items, complex tear-off labor, custom metals. This simplification directly addresses the desk adjuster's cognitive load. They appreciate contractors who use clear subject lines, always including the claim number and a key item like Supplement 1, hail damage and code compliance, and who explicitly list every single attached document. It makes their job easier.
I acknowledge the value of translation, but that translation is worthless if the source material is flawed. The groundwork laid in Chapter 5, especially submitting the supplement in Xactimate format, isn't just convenient. It's the universal language of 95% of the industry, and it's, frankly, mandatory for payment processing. Let's talk about a specific high-value item: Project Management Supervision, or LAB Super. This is a medium approval item that significantly impacts a contractor's profit. A simple bullet point in your email that just says, "Added project management cost," is meaningless.
Okay.
That expense requires citing a specific, highly regulated necessity, often OSHA 1926.502H for fall protection planning. If that citation, that specific regulation that ties the cost to a non-optional federal requirement, is not precisely noted in the F9 field of that Xactimate line item, the bullet point is nothing more than an empty request. The adjuster needs to see that regulation in the place where the cost is being requested, so that when they export the file, the justification travels with the payment request through their internal financial system. The email can't do that, only the F9 note can. The technical substance must precede the simplified presentation.
That's a fair point on the functional necessity of the F9 for processing, especially with high-cost labor items like LAB Super. But let's return to the gatekeeper role of the email. Beyond sheer organization, the email has to establish a professional, collaborative rapport, a teamwork mentality. Remember, the goal here isn't to win an argument, it's to increase the contractor's profits by achieving the correct estimate quickly. A courteous but firm close, acknowledging their workload while saying clear expectations for follow-up, something like, "We appreciate your prompt review and look forward to your confirmation within the next 4 business days to maintain our schedule." That is crucial. It's the last impression the adjuster gets before opening anything. If the email is perceived as demanding or hostile, the adjuster, being human, might just set it aside. The tone isn't just politeness, it's a strategic business decision.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that the tone is more crucial than the technical delivery in the eyes of a compliance department. Tone helps, sure, but verifiable structure is paramount. The documentation has to be presented so that the adjuster can easily locate and verify the evidence needed for their supervisor's sign-off. This is where professional formatting becomes a technical requirement. You have to use highly descriptive file names. If you're citing code 905.2.8.5, the file should be named, Smith IRC code 905.2.8.5 dripedge.pdf. It should never be document1.pdf. Furthermore, we require contractors to include the aerial report, whether it's an eagle view or a roofer, and organize all photos logically, often combined into a single, labeled PDF. A messy submission that forces the adjuster to hunt and piece together evidence, regardless of how polite your closing statement is a massive waste of their time. The clarity of the file structure is the ultimate non-negotiable demonstration of professionalism, not just pleasantries.
So ultimately, my position holds that the introduction email is the strategic entry point that really unlocks the whole process. It controls the narrative, it frames the request with the necessary professionalism, and it provides that immediate scannable justification required to move the claim off the adjuster's desk quickly. And that speed is critical for contractor cash flow and often leads to rapid approval based on a strong, organized first impression.
And mine is that while the initial email successfully frames the supplement and, maybe lowers the adjuster's guard, the final authority and ability to process payment rests entirely on the documentation. Approvals are granted based on concrete, verifiable, evidence-specific code citations, organized Xactimate line items with mandatory F9 notes, and well-organized photographs. Those are the elements that allow the adjuster to confidently justify the requested costs, ensuring the estimate is truly correct, defensible by the contractor, and approvable by the carrier.
So it's clear that both the strategic framing and organization emphasized in Chapter 6 and the technical rigor of the preparation steps that come before it are both essential components for maximizing results. It really is a dual system where structure and substance have to work in tandem to achieve Latif's goal.
Indeed, it's a system, and understanding the different sources of leverage, the psychological incentive versus the, let's call it the compliance necessity, that's key to mastering the process.
That is all the time we have for this deep dive into Step 3. Be sure to tune in next time as we delve into Chapter 7, the follow-up game. That is the critical step that separates contractors who get consistent approvals from those whose expertly prepared supplements just sit in limbo indefinitely.